we are back with your favorite OG blockchain gaming news roundup. It's me, Jenny Jordan, and co-host John Jordan. It is Friday, 19th of September. I knew you'd laugh. We are the OG though. It's late of this roundup at the moment. We have done it for the longest, and the bestest, and the mostest, and the lot.
Gracious. What did you have for breakfast?
That's the problem. Too much caffeine in the system. Let's go straight into the headlines then. Let's talk about actually an interesting thing, which isn't so much a headline. We started off the week talking to industry experts about kind of this trend of growing Degen games. It's not so much that the amount of them are growing, but the players and popularity. We did touch on this actually last week as well, have these sort of slightly niche games, a lot of them on Abstract, some of them on Ronin. We're talking about sort of Gigaverse, Cambria, Land, so these type of games. And we're getting on to talk about Gigaverse a bit more as well in a minute. Question sort of is, are these now proving that there is a sustainable model for Web3 game economies? Yeah. So, what was your takeaway from the? We had quite good engagement from. Yeah. What was your takeaway?
Yeah. I mean, this is a sort of It's interesting that these sort of games have been around, obviously in crypto, since crypto has been around. So they sort of go through sort of somewhat different waves, and they, I guess, originally we would sort of see them. We would have seen them more as sort of crypto sort of mechanisms with some gamified experience around it. So they've been there for the last 5, 6, 7, whatever years, and then in comparison to that, they were what we would say blockchain games, and that's really what we cover, which are more like games first, and then they use blockchain or crypto elements, hopefully to enhance the game experience. And obviously that's been sort of proven quite a difficult thing to get that balance in. So those sort of experiences have always been there. I guess what we've seen as time has gone on is a sort of and I think you see this in every sort of medium, is you see sort of a hollowing out really of the middle, and you sort of end up with these two extremes. So you end up either with the extremes of very big, well-financed, experienced projects that are doing things like eFrontier or Wildcard or Off the Grid or MapleStory, and those are really big, massive, big projects, tens of millions of dollars to develop, and they take time, and it's just taking sort of longer for those sort of things to sort of find their place, and they're still doing that, you could argue. The stuff in the middle where you just sort of did some NFTs and launched a token, and then started to worry about, then worried about the game. Obviously, they've all died off now. But we do have this thing, and I guess the interesting thing now is they have a sort of name. So you said they call them Degen games. I mean, I guess YGG now calls them casual Degen games, which when they first said that, not that long ago, a few months ago, I was sort of like, well, that's sort of funny because, casual players are not Degens, but maybe that's why they're sort of bringing the two things together worked really well. Because what they did certainly in Lowland was the gameplay was very casual. It was just almost like a one-arm bandit. You sort of pressed a button and stuff happened on the screen, and you either won or you lost. So that's the sort of the casual part, the casual Degen, and the Degen part is the high is you're probably going to lose most of the time, but then you might get a big reward at the end. So that's sort of the Degen thing, and in my head that sort of crystallized, I think, a lot of what was going on. And because the sort of the middle ground has gone away, we've sort of been left with these two things. And as you say, the other thing that's been interesting is that game developers who have been around in the space for a while are sort of changing their product design to be more Degen. So I think previously, a couple of years ago, people wouldn't be making this sort of game, and now they are, and it's been more focused towards have quite a thin layer of game, but have these sort of high risk, high reward sort of crypto mechanics in there. And then if you can get a sort of a big enough audience, you're not really looking for tens of thousands of players. You're looking for like 1,000 wallets from people who are crypto rich, and can spend sort of $1,000 each, and then suddenly with that you've potentially got $1 million revenue, and once you've got that, you can actually build out and do different things. So we'll talk a bit more about a game that's doing that. But I think that's sort of the interesting sort of contrast now that we're seeing. And I guess what you posed in your Mavens question on the site this week, and you say got answered really well by different people. I mean, obviously Gabby D's on from YGG is like, yes, Degen gaming's the way. And to be fair to them, I mean, I'm amazed that Lolland game they've done, very simple browser game, has done $2.5 million worth of revenue now. So who's for us to say it's a terrible game? People are sort of voting with their.
It reminds me of sort of the kind of clicker games on Telegram, which people are sort of slagging off, and maybe rightly, because they aren't doing much at the moment. But equally, it's that sort of, it does not require a lot of thinking, a lot of action or attention to sort of play these games. But the different thing now compared to those games is that there is that exciting element of sort of win-lose risk taking.
Yeah. And I guess the interesting thing is on the Telegram thing, not that long ago, really, a year and a half ago, that was the big thing, and those ones had that sort of Degen element, but it just didn't sustain. So people sort of came in and spent money. Maybe if there's a token drop, that was obviously the big thing that started them off. Whereas, I mean, Lowland again has still not been going for a year; it's been going for 5 months, but they've managed with the sort of industry contacts to sort of they add new levels and they do sort of collaborations and they're launching other games, and they've managed to sort of the retention layer is not really in the game because there isn't any meta in there apart from just winning, I suppose. But they've managed to sort of keep that product fresh by doing new levels or mainly doing headlines about how much money they've made because that's like people are like they're making money there. And in general, I would say that this is the problem with these DJing games. I mean, another one that we've been looking at a lot. I've been looking at a lot recently is Football Fun. And I won't go into all the details about that, but that was a very very, I would say, typical sort of Degen sort of game where people who got in early bought all these packs of these football players, and they all 10x, and they all were on Twitter. There was a day where they basically, I made loads of money, and then everyone piled in the next day, and then basically it's sort of, I'm not saying it's not going to continue, but it's not going to continue at that sort of peak level that it once had. So the problem with any blockchain game is generally you can get a lot of people into your launch week. People like kind of make money from this, but after week 2, when everyone's made their money, who's sort of staying for the game? And I guess the thing about I guess a good DJing game or a well-designed DJing game is it manages to keep this high risk, high reward sort of dopamine, hit that you get. It manages to. That's what it's sustaining by however it's doing its design. So I think that's interesting. And I guess as we're going to talk a bit more about Gigaverse. What we're starting to see now, I think, because of the underlying strength of the crypto market in general, and this has been one of the weird things about this year, is the crypto market's really super strong, never been obviously more integrated into normal non-blockchain sort of financial systems. But the gaming side of it it's just gone nowhere. Everything else in crypto is actually sort of doing super well, and the gaming side is still feeding out from its last 2 years sort of I don't know what will be the term, cul-de-sac, sort of reversing along that, trying to work out what it's doing. Whereas this Degen stuff seems to play into that sort of meme coin. So,
yeah. So let's move on and talk about Gigaverse a little bit more then. So at the back of sort of announcing 2 million funding recently, this pixel RPG that's launched on Abstract announced this week. Actually, the founder, Ditch, isn't he called, on Twitter? I don't know his real name. Announced kind of a bit more about the vision for Gigaverse, how they are going to expand that universe. And it makes a lot of sense now why it's called Gigaverse. But yeah, so unfold a little bit more what he's been saying.
Yeah. So Gigaverse only been around for 5 months, and actually, this Dith guy, I think you pronounce it, he actually came from, originally he was with Proof of Play, so they actually use Proof of Play's infrastructure for some of their stuff, but it's not, as far as I know, sort of directly related to Proof of Play. It just happened to be that person sort of founded Gigaverse, and it's one of these games. I mean, sort of my bad sort of thing. I've never played it actually, and it's one of those games, because I'm not into this Degen sort of stuff, and I saw it launching and it just looks like another pixel RPG. There's quite a lot of them out there. So the Cambria is the game, and now they call it Degen Arena, I think. And that was a sort of similar thing, and there's a bunch of others. that haven't, I haven't really looked into them because they just don't really capture my attention. But it seemed, again, it was also interesting that I think part of this, as we'll talk on next as well, is abstract as a blockchain, which is again not something I've looked at in a lot of detail and not been very interested in, which is the blockchain that is being created by the Pudgy Penguins company, and it's sort of launched. I don't even know when it launched last year even, and it's sort of gone through stages, but there's not really been any. It's been unclear to me why abstract is there as a blockchain. What's it doing that's different? There's tons of blockchains out there, so what's it? Okay, it's from Pudgy Penguins people, but what is it doing that is different? And it doesn't really seem to know, I don't think. So there's going to be a token at some point, so everyone's
always from the offset. I looked into it when it sort of launched and what the vision was. Then I've always talked about not just sort of vaguely we're going to onboard the next 3 billion and so, but they've always said we're into sort of casual games and I would say it's always been pretty clear what their vision is actually.
Well, I would say they have a high, so their vision is sort of consumer-facing, blockchain. So you don't, you sort of when you sort of logged in with an email, that was the whole sort of thing. But what I'm saying is, it's all a kind of a vision. I mean, everyone has a vision. We're going to onboard the next billion people to blockchain or whatever. But from the product that's going on there, it's not been very clear. So there's been a whole bunch of obviously games that are on other platforms come to that platform. They did a whole big thing about streaming. So they were one of the first blockchains to have integrated streaming, so people could stream, and everyone's collecting this abstract XP, and there's a big sort of leaderboard, and so lots of people are doing things on abstract because they're getting the XP, and they do quite a good job of they update that every week, so you see what tier you're in, and obviously everyone's going like, well, when the token drops, I'm going to get free money, the usual thing. But it's never been very clear to me beyond that. The streaming, no one's broken out of, no streamers become famous because they were streaming on abstract. It's just been the same old people recycling through. There's been a whole bunch of games on there. They've not been, they've not been very exciting. But what we have since, I think, seen this year is a bit more. This is where you go for these sort of Degen types, and because Degen types tend to like stacking XP for airdrops and stuff. So Lolland, obviously could have gone on any blockchain, could have gone on obviously Ronin to a degree because they're close to Ronin, but didn't. They went on abstract, and then that's been successful. And then you started to see sort of more of these games come. And I think for Gigaverse, it wouldn't have got to where it is if it wasn't on abstract. So I think abstract has sort of now become this sort of, it's found its community, and how long they'll stay when the tokens dropped and live, we'll see. But it's definitely the place now where you sort of come for these sort of degen type games. And we should say degen isn't a sort of pejorative. The sort of degens, degenerative gamblers type. They use that as a sort of honorific themselves. It's sort of So sometimes I might sort of it's a sort of quite elastic term. Sometimes you can use it in sort of a sort of pejorative way. These degens, well, sort of, but equally there is a sort of within that community, of which I'm definitely not part. Is a sort of badge of honour. Anyway, so Gigaverse. Started out as a very simple sort of very small team, paper scissors, rock paper scissors sort of game, an RPG, but they've been successful for whatever reason. They have good links to the community, and they've been building that out now. As you say, they've raised $2 million. They've actually generated, so they've been going now for 200 days or whatever that is in months. But they say they've generated $5.5 million in revenue from various sort of revenue streams. They're very sort of did this very sort of like, he always says, we have 6 revenue streams, and one of the clever ones actually is you have to pay $20 to play the game. You can't just play the game. You have to create an account, and you have to. That's the reason I've not played it, because it's not the $20, but that's something. But equally, you have to get the $20 to abstract, which is not the easiest blockchain to interact with if you're not already on abstract. So anyway, I'm changing that now. I finally got some money onto abstract. So the Gigaverse party starts here. So anyway, they've had 77,000 accounts created. So you can see already that's like, do the maths, $1.5 million for this $20 in ETH sort of payment fee. And then within that, they've also done obviously NFTs. So you have ROM NFTs, which give you energy. They've just done an egg drop, which when the game expands, it was a dungeon based game before, and they're going open open world, and these eggs are going to hatch into mounts. So basically, so you can move around the world quicker. And they've done various other sort of bits and bobs as well. So yeah, that's what they said. Like everyone always says, we didn't need the $2 million that we raised from investors because we've got all this cash flow, but we wanted we wanted the network and have external people having a sort of a stake in our company. And the round was oversubscribed by 3 times, which means that they could have raised 6 million, but they didn't want to give away too much percentage of the company or token or whatever they're doing. So it is interesting, and for someone like me who's very focused on sort of financial flows, it does sort of make you realise that it may be one of these Degen games that sort of lasts a bit longer than we've seen in the past, but they're not, as far as I know, they're not experienced game makers, so they're going to go through some of those sort of problems of sort of building the aeroplane in midair, and when the abstract airdrop sort of happens, how much does that suck out? And if you do look at the numbers, you see there was a big spike when in the first sort of couple of weeks when the game went live, and they had a big spike sort of a bit later on. But at the moment, blockchain games are a bit weird like that. You tend to have quite spiky new audience come in, and then it sort of drops away quite a lot. So it's not like they have 77,000 people playing the game every day. I imagine they have a few thousand. Could be wrong, could be tens of thousands, but I imagine a few, less than 10,000 people probably playing it every day. And partly you say because it's not a super deep game. They hope it's going to be a deep game, but it's not there at the moment. The other interesting thing, I think, which is a good sign, and why you said it's sort of called Gigaverse, which is they're building their own world there, but they want, like sort of everyone does these days, they want an ecosystem. Obviously, it's a big thing for MapleStory Universe, and pretty much every game on the blockchain. The whole point is it's all open source, or most of it's open source, so people can build in there. And already they have a thing called Gigaverse Hub, so people are building the usual wikis, the market analysis apps. There's a couple of auto battler games. So you use the assets you've got in the game, but you use this in another game sort of thing. And one of those games is already generating revenue. So the whole point is, leveraging the best of blockchain sort of primitives, and they seem like they've got enough sort of activation energy in terms of players playing the game and also builders who are interested to build on it. And obviously those two things are synergetic. So you get more players playing it, then you get more people building stuff, and then the players are going, there's more stuff I can play that sort of relate to this game, but not exactly this game, and the whole thing sort of snowballs. So that's what they're planning to do. And I think clearly that's much different to a game where you sort of come in and it's a Degen game and it's a hot potato game and someone makes $1 million and then no one ever plays it again. So we can sort of see, using the term Degen game is slightly our concept has to sort of expand as these games expand. And I think the other final thing to say is, the Degen thing is quite an interesting way of getting product market fit, of getting enough people who are interested in this sort of product and can stick enough money into it to give you that sort of starting base, your sort of core 1,000 players, which every game needs. It's quite hard to get those core 1,000 players, and once you've got them, then you can sort of, you've sort of done the hardest thing, really. I mean, it's not then easy, but you've done the sort of hardest thing of getting these people together and getting them to invest some sort of value into your ecosystem, and then they're the foundation in which you can build on.
Yeah, the problem kind of is that there's not so many of them. So all these games, the more they get, they compete sort of for the same players, sort of thing. So it might be, if you only got about 1,000 core players, but you got 10 games out there competing for those thousands and their sort of wallets, it might be a bit.
And that's why the fact there's not much going on, and there's not. I think this game Gigaverse would have been harder to pull off what it's done 2 years ago because there's just more noise around and more,
Yeah.
I think if you're sort of an interested sort of Degen builder crypto person, there's not that many sort of options. There's sort of like you can do the Eve Frontier thing, but that's probably at a slightly higher level of engagement on what you're trying to do there. MapleStory, but obviously that's a bit Asian company, so maybe sort of slightly different communications sort of issues there. But yeah.
So just noticed this week, Animaker Brand's NHS game is also going on Abstract, and now Why Did You Play, which is Yield Guild Games kind of publishing, they announced that D-Labs Games Gigachadbat, which launched on Telegram initially, is also now coming to abstract, and that sort of seems a right fit, like a match. It fitted quite well for abstract. I've not played Gigachadbat, are you?
Yeah, it's So again, it's sort of funny with D Labs that they sort of were doing these sort of big PC games, and they all moved to Telegram games, and they're fairly successful as much as anyone was there. And now they're sort of moved to Line as well, and now doing this stuff with on Abstract. As I say, I think Abstract is the place for this. I'm not quite sure whether that game works in the same way. So it's a baseball game. It's sort of, there's been loads of mobile baseball games, and because baseball, obviously, maybe not in Western Europe so much, but it's sort of like for a game sport. It's quite nice, the rhythm of it. So you have obviously the balls can fly in different directions, but the rhythm of sort of positioning your bat and hitting it, that has quite a nice feel to it as a game. I mean, I guess in the UK it'd be more about cricket. Cricket is obviously not a global sport in the same way. So baseball actually, even if you had never gone to a baseball match or watched baseball, those sort of games are actually quite appealing. But obviously it means it's a sort of an action game. So you have to look at the ball and tap in. When I was playing it on the Telegram version, obviously you tap on the screen. For a browser version, obviously it's going to be a bit more clunky because you're using a mouse, I assume. And I assume people can play it on tablets, but so there's a bit of maybe a mismatch there in terms of sort of platform and stuff. And the other game they had was a boxing. Is it Boxing Star X? And it was actually, again, a really good game, really good meta. But again, that works really well on a touchscreen. Quite if it works in the same way on, it wouldn't work so well on a sort of keyboard browser. But we'll see.
Lab's really sort of trying to stay in the they had this announcement with the planetarium, their CEO coming on as co-CEO at D Labs, announced this kind of AI thing. So they're kind of interesting like that. They are quite experimental. Obviously realizing that Web3 is still in its early stage, AI to some extent, and kind of just trying to leverage all these different kind of new emerging technologies. It's interesting.
And I think it is that, as I say, this is when you start to see these announcements, more and more announcements, and finally you put it together. People are coming to Abstract because Abstract is new, newish, but they sort of think that's where their community is based. And so even if maybe the sort of the technical or the user experience isn't as good as it was sort of primarily designed for these games, if that's where the audience is, that sort of matters more. And obviously, I say with the Abstract airdrop, people will sort of do anything to get XP. So if you give them enough XP, that's enough to get going. But I just think we'll see more of that. So Abstract will sort of be the place where this thing's happening. And should actually point out that YGG is actually also working with Gigaverse. So there's in LOL land, there's a Gigaverse themed land map going, and also YGG's sort of onboarding people to Gigaverse as well. So you're starting to see, sort of a wider sort of business, community sort of building up there, where everyone's sort of collaborating and getting their communities to try this. And because at the moment, I mean, it is the one thing that Abstract does do well, because anything you do there, you sort of in the back of your head think, well, I'm sort of multiplying that because I'm getting Abstract XP. I mean, obviously, as ever, everyone apart from the person at the top of the list will be disappointed by their airdrops. There's that to come. But
let's move on and talk about the Sandbox, which has announced that I think initial month was July for the launch of its Alpha Season 6. It announced earlier this year they would move to this model of sort of just releasing seasons and try and draw engagement based off the sort of big seasons that they are launching up till sort of, I don't know how many alphas, but up till obviously the next stage, which is beta. So Alpha Season 6 has now been announced. It's going to launch on the 24th of September, and we've known for a while that this is going to be sort of headlined by let's see, I get this right, Cirque du Soleil, the Canadian circus kind of brand production. Yeah, what else have we got to say about Alpha Season 6?
And well, again, as you say, it's sort of, it's been slightly symbolic of the issues that Sandbox has had. That at the start of the year, I spoke to COO Sebastian Bourget, who said they were going to planning to do four seasons this year, and obviously Alpha 5 in sort of Q1, and now we're in almost Q4, and the second one's come out. And he also said they hope to get to a beta season this year as well. Clearly, they don't. I mean, they could get a beta season out still this year, but obviously big reorganisation has happened there, and we'll wait to see. I guess in a couple of months they said they were going to announce some stuff around that, so we'll see. I mean, I think this sort of season was so sort of pre-planned that obviously there's nothing very new in here that in terms of a new direction. I wouldn't really expect to see a great sort of rise of enthusiasm, as we sort of noticed last time. After season, I played quite a bit. I played some of season 5, and some of it was I thought was quite good. But they didn't do an announcement about numbers like they normally do about big numbers, so we thought that was a bit of a sort of a warning sign. And I can't really see. I think they've lost momentum as the. I think they had momentum at the end of last year with Alpha 4. I think that did pretty well, but I think they've sort of drained away since then. So I don't expect. So Alpha 6 is almost like they're contractually obliged to do this sort of stuff with their IP brand licenses. But I wouldn't expect to see tons of people sort of piling in. There's no sort of great big giveaways or anything like that. It's sort of same old. I was sort of debating with myself that will I try again? I mean, I did play quite a bit of it, as much as sort of time as I had. So this time will I even bother? I don't know. I should really bother.
You played season 4. That was the British Museum one, wasn't it? And then season.
No, that was season 5. No, season 5 was the British.
Wasn't that Jurassic World?
Yeah, Jurassic World was the big headline one, but there was British Museum and stuff were in there as well. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I played some of the. I mean, I got quite excited about the start of the season 5 of the Jurassic Park and bought some dinosaur eggs, and I kind of thought, this is, and you go into the experiences, and they are, I think, quite well done. But it's just a bit in my head. It's just a bit all over the place. There's quite a lot to do. So unless you're it's your full-time job for the next, however many weeks, you just can't get through it all. So there's a little bit of like, what can I do? And some of them actually, I found the British Museum one really complicated. I couldn't finish it in the end, even though I had a few goes at it. Spent a couple of hours on going through it all. So in some degree, I think they haven't got product market fit clearly because otherwise we wouldn't be redesigning it. And they're taking them too long. And I think if you look at things like clearly at one point they were I was comparing them to Roblox. Get there in the end. And clearly we've seen that that's over the last 3 years that's been a massive success by just allowing people to make weird stuff. And some of those games are quite complicated, but the complicatedness comes from sort of the multiplayer interaction stuff, not by you got to press this button and get this key, and then you got 30 seconds to run back and open that door, and then you have to, which is the Sandbox ones tend to be a little bit like dexterity in moving through spaces and knowing what to do, which is sort of fun, but every time you get it wrong, it resets, and then you have to, that's what games used to be like, say 20 years ago, even maybe 10 years ago. That's not what games are like anymore. And I think maybe that's one of the problems is they just have ended up building too much internally themselves. So most of those big brand experiences are created by the Sandbox themselves. So they have a sort of philosophy of what they think those games should be. Whereas if you just let, we've said sort of our kids make games in the Sandbox, they wouldn't be deep or good. But if you let the old a million monkeys give them typewriters, one of them comes up with something interesting. So I think
it's also the accessibility. I mean, our children, for instance, they don't each have a PC that they can sit and spend time with. Most children would have some sort of tablet or mobile device that they can play on. And I think that's where Roblox clearly gone right, and the Sandbox sort of missed the train a little bit.
And I guess we do expect that, going back to sort of the start of Degen and all that sort of stuff, and you'd expect the Sandbox, and why there's been this sort of garbled thing that they're going to launch a token launchpad, is because what they would to allow UGC generators, UGC creators to make money, you need to let people aren't going to spend money getting into Sandbox experiences, which I think was the original idea. Was like, it's going to be 10 sand to come into my really cool game. I mean, that's clearly not going to work. But if you sort of leverage it with some of these degen sort of things, and come and complete my level and get 10 of my made up tokens, and they're going into a launch pool and blah blah blah. I mean, that's the crypto way. And even now, I just read this morning, Fortnite's allowing people to make in-game items, and sell them, and obviously, that's the first thing for that's how the user-generated community is now going. You build a platform, and you have to basically let them sort of loose to make money in the way they do it. And the Sandbox has an advantage over non-blockchain platforms, that it's all crypto enabled. So that's what they should, be looking to leverage and sort of drop the, like I would say, the internet. If the internet's told us anything, it's like consumers don't care about fidelity. Most consumers don't care about the quality of what's being offered. They care about the sort of virality and the sort of excitement of it. And we might argue that's bad for the long-term education of the human race, but that's sort of just where we are.
Good. Thanks. Well, it might be some change now with the new CEO, Robbie Young, and a bit of a moving around up in the leadership. We'll see. Finally, then, let's talk about Off the Grid, which has started migrating. I think they have started migrating. They've just gotten the clear to start migrating their EU players into kind of the Gunz mainnet. They started doing that with sort of early players. Well, early players. I don't know if they were US players or not EU anyway. Now they have gotten some regulations cleared, and they can migrate more players onto the mainnet. Yeah. So what does this mean?
I mean, it has been a bit of an ongoing sort of fandango, really, that they, I can't remember when it launched. Did it launch 2020? Has it been over a year, or is it? I can't remember. It's October.
Yes, October.
I think. Was it? Okay. Yeah. So there's been this big sort of, Off the Grid, this sort of, battle royale shooting game has been this game that lots of people have been, much anticipated. It's going to be their first. It still is. I think probably the only console game using blockchain, although quite how much it's using blockchain is a little bit open to question. And there's been this big issue that it's had millions of people supposedly have played the game, sort of created accounts on their testnet. But testnets are testnets. They're sort of made up blockchains. You have to get stuff over on the mainnet, and it's not been very clear why they've not been putting people who are playing the game, now available also on PC, Steam, and console, why they're not playing on the mainnet. And it sort of has transpired in the last few months that they've, for whatever reason, the developer Gunzilla has felt like it's needed a EU, crypto license for its token. And obviously, that legal stuff takes forever. It's called the MICA. That's the sort of I can't remember what it stands for. That's the EU directive around digital money. And they finally got that now. And it seems like they felt like they needed to basically get proper sort of authorization that the Gun token, which is the native token of the Gun blockchain, Gunzy blockchain, is not a security. It's a utility token. Why they couldn't, given America as it is at the moment, I don't know why they've been bothering with the EU. But anyway, they're based in Germany, so maybe that's what they've done. They've been going for all that, and they've basically been saying we can't do anything until we've got this thing done, and then all their sort of PR has been around. Yeah, we've got this thing done almost. Oh, it's done now, and so now it supposedly has been done. So they started saying that they are supposedly at the start of this week. They said so. This week we are starting to migrate EU players of the PC game over from the testnet to the mainnet. Now, I pretty much every day check the block explorer for the Gunzy blockchain because that's the sort of fun guy I am. And there's not been any uptick at the moment, so it's clearly not happened yet. As you say, there was this before all this weird thing about this getting this EU regulation thing through. They did say we're migrating 21,000 of our first players of the game over from the testnet to the mainnet. So there has been activity on the testnet, on the mainnet, of these 21,000. Weird number. Why they felt they could do that? Well, geographically where they are, we don't know. Anyway, but so supposedly we're sort of waiting to get all the EU PC players. I mean, granted, there may not be many of those. So on Steam, it's had a peak player number of about 13,000. So tens of thousands of people, I assume, have played it on Steam. How many of those in the EU? No idea. So we can't, it's not going to be hundreds of thousands of people coming onto this mainnet, so it's hard to judge. The console side, they're still saying we have to work with the platform holders for that to happen. So clearly, that's not going to happen anytime soon. So it's sort of a little bit like Jam Tomorrow sort of story. And the only thing I really care about is they've put out these big numbers. We've had 18 million wallets, and if you look at some of the data around off the grid, it gives you that radar's tracking 250,000 active daily wallets. But that's all on the testnet, so you just have to assume that's in some ways not real numbers. But it's really hard to judge, and I just got, in a sense, want to sort of for everything to be over on the mainnet, then we can just sort of see. And clearly, my sort of proxy for that is what's happening to the Gunz token price. Is it if insiders had all this great knowledge that they're going to suddenly announce it, and you can look at the mainnet, and there's going to be 100,000 people playing it every day, then they'd obviously be buying the token, or people around it will be buying the token, which we don't see. The token price has not done anything. So I'm assuming, despite being the first blockchain game on console and having had presumably millions of players, I'm not saying it's a flop or anything. I'm just saying in terms of on-chain activity, I don't think it's going to be this massive big thing at the moment. It's still the case that supposedly they have a big single-player campaign mode, and I assume they are waiting for everything to be on the mainnet before they launch that, and that will be sort of their big launch. I can't play these sort of games. I have tried to play off the grid when it came out, and it was just embarrassing. I mean, I could hardly even walk around and pick up a gun. It was just, I did. What's the point? You just get, you literally turn up, get killed, spawn, get killed. I mean, it's just, there's no point. So on those really competitive games, there's a certain type of people who love it and they're really into it. But as that sort of group of people gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and so they do have this big single player thing that may branch out their audience and at least give people. It's not even, if you're playing, well, at least when I played, it wasn't even a tutorial. It wasn't even a movement and shoot tutorial. You just sort of were thrown into the game and off you go. So that's pretty dispiriting for people. So we'll see. But it's sort of one of those little numbers I like to keep track of. So if anything does happen, you'll be the first to know.
Good. Sounds good. Right. On that note, let's end for this week. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you all next week. Bye bye.